Hi guys, got a 2008 Tiffin Phaeton. There's nothing wrong with the RV refrigerator. It's not cooling. Done a little bit of troubleshooting. Let me catch up to speed. So I did an inspection on this, and it's a little rough. The refrigerator wasn't cooling. This is a Norcold 1200 four-door refrigerator, two freezer doors, two refrigerator doors. Has a tendency of catching on fire and blowing up and burning coaches down. Now this is a 2008, and so definitely was under the recall, and we'll take a look on the outside, but let me just give you a baseline here. So I've let this thing run all night. I have 30 degrees in the freezer. This should be the coldest side on this side. 35 degrees on that side. Not great. And 78 degrees down there. Now I left the thing in bypass mode. Bypass mode just means that I have the thermistor unplugged so it doesn't know the temperature of the cooling unit. It's just running wide open. The doors seem to lock just fine. I'm not getting any real moisture inside. And I've kept the refrigerator, or the actual unit, about 74 degrees. So 74 degrees inside, is that about right? 76, close enough. But if you look at this one, I can tell you this has been the recall cooling unit back here. Now this cooling unit is actually the actual refrigerator. The rest of the box that we just looked at inside, that's just a foam box with doors on it. This is the actual refrigerator. That's the tubing, that's the cooling unit. This is the new one that doesn't catch its fire as much. Has the heat sensor right there, so it would go to the module right there and shut off power to the refrigerator if there's a fire. So somebody's already replaced this cooling unit at some point. So I assume that it was working. It's not working now. The thing is, these 1200s generally don't work very well. The new cooling units that have been redesigned to cool better, but especially in Arizona heat. So I gave it its best chance. Just take a look at it. You saw on the inside it was mounted on the slide out. That means it doesn't have a chimney vent up on the roof. It has a vent on the side and down below, because we have to have airflow for cooling units to work effectively. Because cooling units make it cold inside by producing heat outside. And so it has to be able to take cold air in, or air going in through those fins on the back and out the top. And it's important that the air does not get trapped at the top right here, which is pretty common on a slide out mount. Pictures of the Medic and Norcold want basically zero clearance on both sides of the refrigerator to keep air from getting stuck in there. And let me go ahead and turn off my fan. Out here on the side. Now what I did do is there's a baffle right up here. It was stuck on the other side of the tubing right here, and so it was actually letting air get stuck in there. It got really hot up in here. It's pretty cool, pretty common. So I just went ahead and gave it its best shot by getting that baffle tucked back behind right there. I sealed it off on both sides right there and on the other side, just to try to keep hot air from getting stuck on top of the refrigerator, because if you're making hot air on the outside and warming up the box, it's going to be very difficult to cool it off at the same time. Now this thermal disc right there actually controls the cooling fans that are mounted right about there on top of the cooling units to blow air up. They're only found on Norcold 1200s for the most part, and those are working, but I thought I'd give it its best chance by mounting a temporary fan right there. Now truth be told, it generally takes about 3 to 4 days to truly diagnose a cooling unit, a cooling issue on a refrigerator, because you can only make a change, wait overnight, find out if it cooled, make another change, wait overnight, because it takes about 12 hours to see an effective change on these gas absorption refrigerators. And I think I'm going to go ahead and condemn this cooling unit, which is unfortunate because it's not that old. It's pretty obviously not that old. So there's the backstory. I did my best to make it work, and now I have to order a new one, which is very unfortunate because it's like $1,300 just for that cooling unit, and then we still have to pull the refrigerator out and rebuild it. But these refrigerators are about $4,000, which is, again, crazy when you can think that it's just a foam box with a $1,300 cooling unit on the back side of it. But at any rate, that's the backstory. We're going to go ahead and change out this cooling unit, and I don't know if I have enough time for it, but we'll find out. Let's do the first thing we need to really do, because this is a propane refrigerator. Let's turn off the propane. All right, propane's off. Back here, there's really not a lot holding these refrigerators in, surprisingly. There's a few screws down here that really don't do much. Just keep it from sliding forward, not tipping or anything. Disconnect all the wires, the propane lines, unplug everything, then we'll go inside. I think this is not a Winnebago, but if it is a Winnebago adds a screw from the top down to the top of the refrigerator. It's very, very frustrating. They also bolt the refrigerator using some brackets they make. So it's safer, but it's frustrating. Now, don't forget to always double wrench your lines. Don't want to twist up the gas valve there. I did already check it on propane. Okay, it did light on propane. Remember, all the propane does is provide a heat source. The electric heating elements are just a heat source, so even though propane might be a little bit more efficient making heat than electric heating elements, they should work pretty much the exact same way. Get back to work. Alright, so believe it or not, with that screw, we're done in the back now. So we just have to disconnect the 12 volt power, the 110 power, which is this cord right there, just unplug it, undo that LP line, and now the back is actually disconnected. I didn't see any screws up there in the way, but I didn't point it out. That baffle right there, that's pretty vital. We had good airflow. Maybe I'll show you that real fast. I was watching a YouTube channel. I think, oh, My RV Works. I think Darren is a tech there. He does a pretty good job. He did a video troubleshooting an RV refrigerator once and didn't have a good airflow, and he kind of explained the importance of airflow, which I just alluded to. But if this baffle right here wasn't here, all the air that was being drawn up from down below would just dump out right here. It wouldn't go past these fins right there. And that's probably the most important part to keep cool, or keep airflow on. So it's important to make sure that this baffle was there, that it's going up to those fins so the air's not being dumped out below. I'll probably put a link to his channel, maybe explaining that, but he did a better job than I will. Now, I think I know what a lot of you guys are going to say. Why don't you just upgrade this refrigerator from an RV refrigerator to a residential refrigerator? This Phaeton has a inverter on it. I think a 2,000 watt inverter. It's already got an inverted circuit 2 there for the ice maker. Why are you not just putting a residential refrigerator in? And that's because this isn't my RV. The owner wants a RV refrigerator. That's what they wanted. If it were my RV, I would probably just go ahead and put solar on the roof and put a residential refrigerator in and enjoy life a little bit more. It's kind of a wash if you're paying out of pocket for a cooling unit replacement on a 1200. If a residential refrigerator, if you can find a good one at $1,000 to about $1,500, if you spend $2,500, it's definitely not a wash. But I do like residential refrigerators a little bit more, to be honest. They cool faster, you have more room, and overall, it's a much better experience. But that's not why we're doing this, because it's not my choice. They want an RV refrigerator, so we're going to fix this RV refrigerator. So because I know we're going to be doing a cooling unit, the first thing I'm going to do, because cooling units are going to be done basically on the floor right here, is I'm going to rip all these doors out, because it just makes life easier, because I don't like laying the refrigerator on the door, because I don't want to damage anything. So let me just go ahead and get all that taken out, and it'll be a lot easier. Now, it doesn't take much. There's just 5/16 screws on all these hinges. I usually take the top ones off. The doors down below just slide into that pin, so you can take the top hinges off, slide out the freezer doors, do the same thing down below, take the bottom hinges off, slide out the refrigerator doors, and then just take the rest of it off pretty fast. So let's see if I can do that. All right. Now, generally, the number one cause for cooling units to go bad is going to be operating your refrigerator outside of level. There's no pump that pumps that refrigeration, which is mostly just ammonia and water with a little bit of anti-corrosion salts added to it. And if you're outside of level, what was I getting at? There's no pump. There's no compressor that moves that refrigerant. It's just gravity that allows it to flow. So if you're outside of level, you get a low side, it gets really hot on the other side, and you create a little bit of a plug or a dam in the cooling unit. All right, so the next step is just going to be to take all this off, because now without the doors there, I don't want to damage the catch, the hinges, the optical board, or the little filler strip right there. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. With that basically stripped down to just its foam shell, the last thing we have to do is just take the screws out that are holding it on. I just have these buttons right there. Take the 4 screws out up there. Take another 4 screws out right there. I don't see anybody putting any over there or over there, so it should be good. And the good news is, I'm sure somebody's done this before, so it should come out pretty easily. The other thing I like to do about it this way is, you don't have to take the doors off to do this, but you are going to have to get access to the cooling unit screws right there, and right inside the fins there. And it's so much easier without those doors always closing on you. Makes the refrigerator easy to move, especially if this refrigerator was mounted at a closer opening in the hallway where you need about 4 more inches in order to pull it out easily. So this is just a lot easier to do it this way. It's easier to grab onto this little shelf right there in order to pull out the refrigerator if you need to, without the doors on. Go ahead and take the screws out of that cooling unit right there. Probably going to be deleting the ice maker because they didn't have it hooked up anyways, gives you more freezer space. And then these screws right there. Now these screws down here actually don't hold the cooling unit to the refrigerator at all. They just hold these fins to the cooling unit tight. But you don't want to forget those and pull out the fins with it, because then you always forget to put that in. Yeah, it was bad anyways. It's hard to see how gross that mold is. These always go bad. I usually just will put my fingers in there if I can hear that. That means that ice maker's bad. Now I've taken a huge gamble that we're going to get a cooling unit today. No matter how many years I've been a mechanic, I always hope for the best. I don't know if we're going to have it in stock or not. I don't know if I'm wasting my time to put this all back together again, but the refrigerator doesn't work, so what's the whole purpose? The bet paid off. We have a cooling unit, so now I can pull it out. All I'm going to do is pull this thing out, plug up some holes in the sidewall so I don't lose the cold air, and nobody bother to make mean comments. I'm going to go ahead and protect the floor when I lay it down. Don't worry. Okay, so I've already done all the pre-work, so all my screws are out. Now I can just lay this thing down. I'm not saying I've ever laid it down without taking those screws out, but definitely have done that. You have to pick it back up again. With that laid down, the next step is to undo the cooling unit. Just a few screws actually hold it in place. One right there, I think 2 or 3 down, and this coil right there. Now, I generally always take a picture of it before I take it apart because even though I've done probably 100 of these, I still forget things. Now we're actually going to be deleting the ice maker from this because that was not being used anyway, so that'll solve a lot of our problems. Alright, so the next step is there's a few screws right there. Down, get those pulled out. So now theoretically, the cooling unit is loose. So we do need to unplug the heaters. These are the 2 AC heaters. 1200 has 2 AC heaters. Norcold, because they have a tendency of burning down, have this recall module. So this is the cover for the board. So we're just going to unplug those. And the last thing we have to do is this igniter that goes to there. We won't have a new igniter in the new unit or a new burner, so we just have to take the burner chamber apart. So this little guy right here is just designed to catch the condensate from the fins from the back of the refrigerator. It goes down this tube, catches right there. It's right next to this heat source and just evaporates away. Now so far this is probably the trickiest part of the entire job that I've ever run into. I made this wrench, a line wrench, out of this starter wrench a long time ago. I think it's 5/8, yeah, for the nut on the burner. But I've never ran into it where this tube doesn't get stuck to the brass nut. And so if you try to undo that, you're just going to twist this aluminum tubing, and then it kinks and you have to replace that tube. That's usually a hard part to find. So what I've found is easier to do than that is just disconnect this entire burner assemble, or the gas valve. All right, now I got all that out of the way. Now I can just pull the burner out. It's a lot of work just pull the burner out. So there you go. All right, so pretty much the next step is to actually pull the cooling unit off. Let me get everything out of the way. There's usually tape on the sides. It's usually foil tape. It's really not as vital as all of us techs make it out to be. But I might as well get it out of the way. Alright. We should be good. Now don't forget, this is charged with hydrogen gas, so we don't want to rupture it or bend it or break it. The last thing to be aware of is going to be that condensate drain down below. That actually does run through the cooling unit, so when we pull this out, we want to make sure we aren't losing it. Alright, hopefully you can see that drain hose right there. Whew. Alright, so that's out of the way. Now, the only thing I see so far that concerns me just a little bit is how much thermal mastic is right there and how much it didn't smash. So maybe the cooling unit wasn't bad, maybe it was installed poorly, but it's not a risk I'm willing to take. Our next step is going to be to clear off all this thermal mastic. Yeah, see, that's an awful lot. It didn't smash down very well right there. At any rate, the next step is to clean all that old compound off and all the way around the channel right there. I just use a putty knife to do that. So the new cooling unit is going to come with thermal mastic. This stuff isn't magic. It just helps transfer the temperature a little bit better. More of it doesn't mean better of it. So you can kind of see the carcass of this box is just foam right here. A little bit of foil tape, paper. So the cooling unit itself gets sealed by that same thermal mastic. It looks like whoever did this last time didn't clean off the old stuff, because you can see the new stuff. So it's important to get all the old stuff out of there because we want to make sure it seals really well, because that's what's going to keep all that heat that gets at the back of this thing from getting inside. Alright, so all the big chunks are cleaned out. I'm going to vacuum it out, wipe it down real fast, and then we'll start putting this new cooling unit in. I don't know if they didn't clean out enough to make good contact. If we look on the back side of the cooling unit right here, I mean, that doesn't look like it's smashed down very hard. So we need this plate and these tubes basically to be in contact with that aluminum. Otherwise, we just have dead airspace in there, and air is a pretty good insulator and not a good way to transfer heat. But without pulling the refrigerator, checking the cooling unit installation, rebuilding the whole thing, putting it back in place, I don't know if this cooling unit's good or not. So it's not worth my time or effort to do the job twice just to find out the cooling unit really is bad. I'll go with the known brand new good cooling unit and hope for the best. That's my hope. So it is awkward to pull out without damaging things, but it can be done. Don't throw it away yet, because you might need parts. You don't want to find out you needed parts. Hey. So far, so good. Looks like the right one. Wonderful. All right, so the first thing you have to do is find your thermal mastic. Don't want to lose that. So you usually have a few tubes of it, and then grab your instructions. I do actually read the instructions each time, just to make sure nothing changed. Get your hardware, your new screws. Always use these screws instead of the old ones, because the old ones will break on you if you use them. And the owner's manual and your tubes of heat conductive thermal mastic. So let's get these instructions open and try to make some sense of it. All right, there's a 1210 or 1210 model, so I'll use those instructions. Now, first things first, we'll try to make sense. This is the left side freezer compartment, right side freezer compartment, and these are the fins on the refrigerator compartment. So coming out where the endothermic reaction happens on the ammonia, this is where it's going to be the coldest. So that's why the left-hand freezer is always the coldest. And then after that, it's going to be the right-hand freezer. And then it's going to come down to the refrigerator. Starts at cold right there, gets a little bit warmer, and less warmer right there. Just an endless loop, always pumping heat out. So that hopefully makes some sense of what's going on in here. All right, so where are we at here? We're going to apply the mastic. It shows you want a bead right here on that lip and a bead right there on that lip. So not on the bottom right here. They want it kind of on the side right there. Good luck on that, but that's what they want. Then after we're done putting the actual sealant around, we need to put the mastic on the tubes. They want it on the tubes. They don't want to put it on here first. They want to make sure it's where it needs to be. And I'll be honest, I like to cut off any extra foam from that tube. I don't know if it's necessary or not, but I don't like, I mean, foam's a pretty good insulator, and we want to make sure that that's not insulating the tube. Because the tube right there, that's where all the cold transfer is going to be. Same thing on the refrigerator. So let me go ahead and clean off some of that foam on this too. Maybe it's easier to see right there where that foam oozed out over the top of the tube. I'll just scrub that part off really fast. Anywhere I see that, like here and there, and maybe here a little bit. So let me do that real fast. I mean, I'm not sure how necessary that is. Norcold felt fine about it sending it out of the factory like that, but I don't want to do this job a second time because I did it wrong or it didn't work well. So let me go ahead and put all the sealant on. All right, so with that, we have our 2 beads at the top of each little lip right there. Now, it's important to realize that this is not glue, it's not adhesive. This is just creating basically an air dam to keep outside air from getting inside the box. That's why there's 2 ledges right there. Discourages air intrusion. And then we have our 2 beads just on our tubing itself. So if you notice, there's no mastic in between the freezer section and the refrigerator section. Just like it says right there. Look, nothing. D. So now we just have to put it back in. The biggest key to that is don't forget to put the condensate tube through this little hole right there. A lot of times there'll be a piece of foam, sponge foam you have to pull out of there in order for it to push in. But other than that, we're ready to put this thing back together. All right, let me clear off my workspace right here. All right, let's go ahead and hinge it down. Don't push too hard on any of this stuff because we don't want to break any of the tubing. Like I said, this thing's like $1,300. We don't want to break this. What I do like to do is put these screws in first, then we're going to lift it up because that's the important part. Now don't get too concerned about completely lining up these holes because there's a little bit of a sheet metal right there. That's all it's going into. It's very unimpressive in the foam. You might have to wiggle this around a little bit to find something. That's better. And the last ones are going to be right inside these coils here. But what I like to do next is flip the refrigerator back on in because we have to put all those inside screws in at the inside on the refrigerator. And I don't want to put everything back together and have the cooling unit locked down where I don't know if it's going to work or not. I need to make sure those holes line up in the right spot before I get too far rebuilding this thing. Okay, we'll put it up on end. It will be hard to see, but you should be able to see where a little bit of foam is sticking in. You can kind of see where I just put a divot right there. So that's the hole in that plate on the inside. That's where the screw is supposed to go. So I like to go ahead and get those going first. That way, if I needed to move the cooling unit side to side to find those holes, I can do it right now, rather than having it locked down before. Same thing with under here. Yeah, that's actually lined up really well already. All right, so you get new screws with the new cooling unit, but you don't get these stainless steel washers. You need these flat washers. Otherwise, it ain't gonna work. I definitely like to make sure that I'm lining these up on a known hole. Now you could be a brave soul and try to make your own holes, but you don't want to be the guy that put a hole in some tubing that shouldn't have had a hole in it. But I like to get them started and not try to tighten them up all at the same time. All right, let me go get all the other ones going and we'll make sure that we're getting tight, because we want to make sure that plate is as close to this as we can get it, because we don't want to have a gap. That would cause the air gap. So ultimately what we're trying to do is squeeze that black plate against this aluminum plate. And so if you just do one screw at a time, work your way around, kind of like you're tightening up a tire. That way you don't get one spot that binds up. You'll watch this actually bend back, and then you'll be sucking in the coolant against the foam box, or the cooling unit against the foam box too. Because no matter how hard you push, you're really not going to get this to be tight. It's these screws that are doing all the work. That's why I want to make sure these are in before I rebuild this thing. So I just tightened up this screw, and now look how loose that washer is as it spins. So that's all we're going to do. Work our way around. We'll be good. Some might say this is the most vital connection point, and that's me. That's what I'm saying. Now obviously you can over tighten these, and they will break off in there. If that does happen, you can drill new holes next to it, but hopefully you don't have to do that. So I'm just going to follow up with my little 1/4-inch ratchet and just check the torque. It's always hard with the impact to know exactly how tight it is. Now I have to do down here is put the last screws in that go right on the fins right there. Now this actually doesn't clamp anything down other than to get the fins in contact with the tubing back there. That is to say, these fins are almost as thick as a couple layers of tinfoil. So it's not something you can put too much effort into. You just want to make sure they're secured. Alright, so with all those screws installed and all those screws installed, we're ready to lay this thing back down again and put the refrigerator back together. Because now we know the cooling unit's in the right spot. So they're back down on the ground. The next thing we're going to do is actually put our magical tape right here to act as a air dam. So just box it all the way around. Do your best. Cover as much as you can. I don't know. I have my doubts how vital it is. So I, like most techs, just use aluminum tape. Alright, there you go. Magical tape all the way around. I usually put 2 or 3 layers of tape on all 4 sides to do our best to keep air out. Now don't forget I did do it ice maker delete, so I need to fill these holes. I'm going to use some foam on that, but I need to tape up the other side so the foam doesn't go to the other side. And then we have a hole where that condensate drain's going through. We want to make sure we don't let air in there. So I'll make sure that when I foam these in, nothing's going to make a big mess on the other side. Other than that, it's just going to be assembly, just like taking it apart. So let me just do that real fast and we'll check back in. Alright, so with that, I'm basically back together, but it is a good idea to test your fans while you're in this position, because once it's installed, it's going to be hard to know if they work or not. And guess what? That one's not working. So I got one good fan and one fan not working, so it's a good thing I did this. So it looks like I need to replace I might as well do both fans at this point. Now while I get replacement fans, one thing I will point out is this is the flue, has a flue baffle in it. This is very important. Without that, it will not cool on propane because it doesn't slow the flame down without that. Now on older ones, there'll be a flue cap, a little chimney cap that would be on top of this cap, or this flue. That does not go back on. These instructions are new and actually do show that. Right there, it says don't put the cap on. That wasn't always there either, so it's important not to put that cap back on if your old one did have a cap. So now, let me go ahead and hook this up. There's my new fans. Go ahead and replace both of them because why not? Now I just have to finish securing the wires. We'll put this thing back in place. Can you believe it? 14 hours later, we're about ready to put this thing back in place. So we deleted the ice maker harness. We deleted the opening there. We filled that. We got that going. Harness right here to our new fans. And I even changed out the thermostat that controls those fans. And I think we're about ready to put this thing back in place. The only thing I did do that I didn't show you is going to be right here on the opening. So I went ahead and I secured this baffle a little bit better. Pay no attention to this. It's just kind of keeping the hot air from coming in right now. I'll get all this out of the way. So I secured this because this panel is loose. It's ugly, but it should work. I'm not just going to try to thread the needle perfectly here. I'll address any concerns once it's already mounted. You'll notice this right here. That's how Tiffin meets the requirement for zero clearance on the between the side of the refrigerator and the compartment. So it's just a little bit of upholstery fabric or foam. Alright, obviously the next step is to start putting it back together right here, but before I do that, let's go on the outside. I want to make sure we're not pinched on any of the wiring harnesses back here, or the LP line. We'll come up here and make sure we're not snagged on, you know, the baffling like it is right there. Now's an easier time to adjust that. Okay. I think we're looking really good there. Now we can put this back together. Alright, so the next step is to, of course, put this whole back together and turn it on. We'll let it cool overnight, and hopefully I come back to a cool refrigerator. Otherwise, I squandered a lot of money and a lot of time. Again, we'll do the little, alright, just like that, we're done, put back together. So now it's just going to be a matter of waiting for tomorrow. You need to give it at least 12-hour head start. 24 hours to check real cooling, but let's see where we're at. 91 degrees. About what it is in here, I think. 92 degrees. I stand corrected. And probably should get a better gun. 90 degrees. All right. I didn't cover it. Hook up the LP line, do an LP leak test, and check ventilation on the other side. I'm gonna let this cool overnight, and then hopefully tomorrow morning, when you guys see me, we'll have a cool refrigerator. You'll pretty much know immediately, because if this video is posted, I'm sure that it worked. If not, I wouldn't have posted this video. Well, if there's any good news, I've just had it running for about an hour. Well, not an hour, but a little while. The fan's already kicking. I can feel a lot of air moving now, more than I could last time. So we know that part's working. I don't feel any hot air trapped up in here. So I have high hopes on this. Well, we got an unexpected rainstorm. It's great in the middle of summer, unless of course you leave your refrigerator open. But luckily, I think we're okay. Didn't get any water in here, and don't want to get that module wet. It will trip it if it gets wet. Let's go inside and see how we did. There it is. All right. So what we got? 71 degrees in here. ACs are working. Ooh. I'm going with -6. I'm going with -2. Ooh, 41 degrees. 30 degrees. We would like, that sounds good. So obviously in a refrigerator you want about 38 degrees, 40 degrees. The best way to check in the refrigerator would be having a thermometer actually in like a thing of water to get a true temperature. But it's definitely a lot better than like the 90 degrees it was before. So I'm calling this a win. There it is, guys. I still got TVs to install, things to do outside. There's a lot of work to go on in here. I'm not rebuilding this, but I'm doing a lot. So there it is, a cooling unit replacement on a Norcold 1210 refrigerator, 4-door refrigerator. The 1200 would be very similar. Fans are in a different location, but Feel pretty good about this. Honestly, I'm not confident the old cooling unit was bad. But I can give you the back history is that I was told that the refrigerator cooled about 4 months ago just fine, and now it wasn't cooling at all, so I thought maybe the cooling unit had gotten clogged. It'd be a big risk to put the whole thing back together the right way once we discover that it wasn't really installed very well, and just to find out that the cooling unit was bad. So I'm up in the air on if I saved the old one or not, but there's really no way to really test it without having it built and installed. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I got a lot of work to do. Alright, let's see if it works on propane now, right? I think it's in auto mode, so if I lose power, we should switch over to propane. There we go. That's a good sign. Very good sign. So now if I plug it back in, that burner should shut off. There we go. Back to 110. I really need to get these covers back on. It's raining too much. It doesn't rain here a lot, so kind of enjoying it. It's a good rain. So I still have to order the cooling unit, so I won't take it completely apart because I don't want to have to put it back together again when I find out that the parts aren't here. So I'll get that out of the way. I only have about 30 minutes to get this thing at least prepped because I have to be down the street somewhere in about 40 minutes. The second major cause is poor design from the manufacturer. I only got about 3 hours to have this thing done and back in so I can test it overnight, because I only got overnight to get this thing done. It's a lot of pressure. I don't speak French. Spanish is very poor, so let's go to my English section. Don't do what I just did there. And of course, I might as well show my work, right? Alright, we're not bubbling. High-tech soapy water, that's all that is.